Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with pumpkin cinnamon rolls. That's right, I learned this from a witch who was turned into a zombie by a vampire werewolf, which is why I'm featuring it for Halloween. It's also scary delicious. And you know who loves this? Mummies. And speaking of Halloween, this video is just part of a larger playlist called Ultimate Halloween Treats on YouTube. So make sure you look out for that. But in the meantime, let me show you how to make this. So in the bowl of our electric stand mixer, I'm going to add 1 package of dry active yeast, a big pinch of sugar, and some very warm but not too hot water. About 100 degrees is good. I'm going to whisk that up, and we're going to let that yeast activate for about 10-15 minutes. And if your water wasn't too hot and the yeast was good, it's going to look like this. So after our yeast is all beautifully foamy like that, we're going to go ahead and start adding the rest of the ingredients in, which include pumpkin puree. That is not pumpkin pie filling, by the way. That is just pure pureed pumpkin. I'm also going to add some heavy cream, some salt, some melted butter, a splash of vanilla, and a little bit of pumpkin pie spice. And I'll explain what that is on the blog. And other than flour, that's pretty much it for the dough. Now at this point, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to put sugar in or not. I know there's some natural sweetness in the pumpkin, so I was just going to go ahead and add flour, but you'll see I changed my mind here in a minute. But anyway, at this point, we're going to add half our flour in and 1 whole egg. We're going to grab our dough hook attachment and start mixing this on a low speed. So we're just going to mix that for about 2 minutes until it looks like that. And at that point, I'm going to add in some sugar and the rest of the flour. So I basically changed my mind about the sugar. And when you do this, you can add that sugar right in with the pumpkin and the rest of the ingredients. Really doesn't matter as long as it's in there. And then we're going to turn that mixer back on low, and that's going to knead for about 6-7 minutes. And the amount of flour called for should just be barely enough to have that dough pull away from the sides of the bowl like that. So after a few minutes, if it's too wet and sticky, you can add a little more flour until it pulls away from the sides. And once it looks like that, like I said, you want to knead this for about 6 minutes. Until you have a very, very smooth, slightly sticky, and elastic dough. All right, it should be very, very soft and supple. See that? So mine's looking good and feeling amazing. At that point, we're going to want to drizzle in a couple drops of vegetable oil into the bowl, and we're going to use that to coat the dough. So I'm going to give it a little rub, a little oil massage, place it back in. I'm going to put some foil over the top, and we're going to let that dough double in size. It's going to take about an hour and a half, I guess. And while we're waiting, we might as well go ahead and make our sugar cinnamon filling, which is so easy. We're going to take some brown sugar, some white sugar, and a whole lot of cinnamon, and we're simply going to take a spoon and mix that together. So once that's mixed together, just set that aside, and we're ready for the dough, which hopefully by now is doubled in size. We're going to transfer that onto our cutting board that's been well floured. Of course, that's going to deflate the dough, which is fine, because what you're going to do is use your hands to pat it out into a kind of rectangular shape, right about 1 inch thick, something like that. Of course, you're flouring your hands when needed, and when it looks something like that, you're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of flour, switch to a rolling pin, and roll that out into a rectangle approximately 20 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to check with my tape measure here. That's 20 by about 12, close enough for YouTube. And we are ready for maybe my favorite part, the buttering of the dough. And we're not talking about a little bit of butter. We're talking about a ton of butter. Can you use margarine for this? Absolutely not. If you do, I will have to haunt your dreams for eternity. So suit yourself. So I'm just using my pastry brush to cover the surface except the edge closest to you. I'm going to leave about 2 inches at the top there unbuttered because that's where we're going to finish our roll. So don't butter that front edge. At that point, I want you to evenly distribute your sugar mixture over the dough. All right, get it as even as possible. And once that's sprinkled on, you're going to take a little bit of water on your fingertip and just go right along that edge we left unbuttered, and you'll see why in a second. And at that point, you're ready to start rolling. So start at the bottom and roll up nice and tight. You don't want to smash everything, but you don't want any pockets of air in there, so roll it up nice and firmly. So you're going to roll it up, roll it up, roll it up, and when you get towards the end here, you're going to try to do 2 things. You're going to try to end up with the seam on the bottom, and you're also going to use your hands to kind of make it as even as possible. So that's looking good. And because we painted a little bit of water on that edge, that seam at the bottom is going to seal nicely, and that is ready to cut. So we're going to take off about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch on either end. Just because of the rolling, those ends are going to be mostly all dough. So trim a little bit off. Then I'm going to cut it in half. And then each half in half, which gives you 4 pieces. And if you cut each of those 4 pieces into 4, like I'm doing here, you're going to have 16 of these beautiful pinwheel pieces of dough. All right, you can see that beautiful cinnamon sugar filling in there. Just gorgeous. All right, those you're going to carefully place into a very well buttered baking dish. We're going to place those in. All right, make sure they're all evenly spaced. And now we need to let these double in size. So I'm going to wrap it in plastic. I'm going to put mine in the oven. The oven's off. I'm just using that as a place to let them rise. And mine took about 45 minutes, and they doubled, and they looked like that. So I'm going to take the plastic off. We're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. We're going to place those in the center of the oven. And we're going to bake those for exactly 30 minutes. And 30 minutes later, they're going to kind of look the same, but they're going to be baked. And the outside will have a little bit of a golden brown crust. So we're just going to leave those alone. We're going to let them sit right there for about 15 minutes to cool down a little bit while we make our cream cheese glaze, which is extremely easy. So check it out. So in a small bowl, I have some room temperature cream cheese, some powdered sugar, and a splash of milk. And I'm simply going to take a spoon and mix that until smooth. And yes, that spoon did turn into a whisk. So I don't know why I was using a spoon there, but a whisk is going to work much better. Now, some people like to put a few drops of vanilla here. I don't because I had vanilla in the dough. But you could double up if you're into the, vanilla thing. And when that is mixed and completely smooth, go ahead and spread it over your warm pumpkin cinnamon rolls. And of course you could just dump it on and spread it over, but if people are watching, slowly drizzle it. And while you do, look at the expression on their faces. Now that is casting a spell. And that is pretty much it. If you want to, you can garnish with a little bit of pumpkin seed. I think it looks nice. Those spots of green against that golden roll. I think that looks really good. And that was unbelievably delicious. Oh, and one pro tip, if you do serve these at a Halloween party, be careful of the zombies. After they finish the cinnamon rolls, sometimes they try to eat your brains. So just a heads up. And of course, the true test to any cinnamon roll, pumpkin or otherwise, is can you unravel it so that you can eat each sticky layer individually? Yes, you can. So anyway, like I said, this would make a great Halloween treat. Let the kids have the candy. We will enjoy some of these. So I really hope you give these a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.